Okay, so picture this. It's 1912. An antique book dealer steps into the dusty, totally forgotten archives of a dark Jesuit castle in Italy. He pulls out this heavy chest that's been sealed away for centuries, and inside that chest, he uncovers a book that, by all logical accounts, simply should not exist. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive straight into the ultimate historical anomaly.
Right off the bat, let's talk about what makes this discovery so incredibly chilling. We're not just looking at some scribbled, messy diary here. Every single page of this incredibly thick manuscript is filled with an entirely unknown language. The handwriting is elegant, it flows perfectly from left to right. But here is the truly uncanny part. Across hundreds of pages, there is literally not a single error. No strikeouts, no tiny corrections, no smudged ink anywhere. Whoever wrote this, they didn't even pause to think.
Which brings us to Section 1, the book that shouldn't exist.
For well over a century, the greatest minds on the planet treated this text not just as some fun Sunday crossword puzzle, but as a literal war they had to win. It became an absolute obsession. But this manuscript, it basically became a graveyard for geniuses. We're talking about the absolute heavyweights of human intellect. The elite military codebreakers of World War I tried to crack it. Alan Turing, yes, the legendary mathematician who broke the Nazi Enigma code, he spent time trying to defeat it. Even the FBI had a go. You kind of almost have to feel bad for them, right? The smartest people in human history getting completely dunked on by a dusty old book? Every single one of them failed. Because this wasn't just a tough code. It really seemed to be an impossible one.
Moving on to Section 2, the perfect linguistic anomaly.
Now, to understand why this manuscript absolutely terrifies professional cryptographers, we have to think about how secret codes actually work. You see, human beings are just inherently predictable. When we write a secret code, we usually just substitute letters or shift them around a bit. And if you stare at a coded text long enough, patterns always emerge. Like the letter E is the most common letter in the English language, right? Eventually, our human bias reveals itself. But when analysts finally ran the Voynich text through mathematical models, they discovered something that literally sent shivers down their spines. It's called Zipf's law. Basically, it's the strict mathematical principle that governs word frequency and distribution, and it is found in all genuine human languages. Finding this proved a terrifying truth. This manuscript is not just some random jumble of gibberish generated by a madman. No way. It behaves exactly like a real, fully structured language, complete with distinct grammar, prefixes, and suffixes.
When you compare standard medieval Latin side by side with the Voynich script, the contrast is wild. Standard Latin has totally predictable human patterns, repeated phrasing, standard spacing. But the Voynich script, it looks utterly alien. Yet, under the hood, it is mathematically flawless. It perfectly obeys these hidden, complex statistical rules of language that linguists didn't even officially discover until the 20th century.
And guys, the mystery only deepens when we look at the physical materials. Carbon dating definitively places the creation of the vellum parchment way back between 1404 and 1438. Plus, microscopic analysis of the early 15th century ink proves it was applied incredibly smoothly. There are zero hesitation marks, no hidden pencil outlines underneath to guide the writer. So, the absolute kicker here is whoever wrote this was completely 100% fluent in this totally unknown script. They wrote it out as effortlessly as you or I would jot down a grocery list.
But okay, if the language is real, the actual content of the book is an absolute nightmare. It's organized into a few main sections. First, you've got botany, except the plants drawn here don't match a single known species on planet Earth. They look like these bizarre, chimeric hybrids, like the roots of one species were just violently grafted onto the leaves of another. Second is astronomy, but it features entirely unfamiliar constellations. We're talking stars we don't recognize. And third, biology. This section contains these surreal, honestly kind of disturbing illustrations of women bathing inside highly complex, interconnected green mechanical tubes. It is totally alien. And this bizarre content really leaves us grappling with three distinct theories of where this thing actually came from.
Let's dive into that first theory in Section 3, the multi-million-dollar scam.
So this first theory tries to explain all the madness through the absolute oldest motive in the book: cold, hard cash. See, back during the Renaissance, holy relics and magical texts were at the absolute height of fashion. People went crazy for them, and the financial stakes were massive. Historical records actually show that the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, who was totally obsessed with the occult by the way, bought this exact manuscript for 600 ducats. To put that into perspective, that is a staggering fortune, equivalent to roughly $100,000 today.
So the theory goes that some brilliant con artist essentially invented a fake matrix just to rob a really rich, really gullible emperor. But hold on a second. If you really think about it, the logic here totally falls apart and pretty much dismantles the whole forgery theory. Because if you just want to rip some guy off, why on earth would you go to these insane extremes? Why spend months, maybe even years, meticulously drawing hundreds of highly detailed, completely unique illustrations? And more importantly, why invent a grammatically flawless mathematical language that obeys Zipf's law literally centuries before Zipf's law was even a thing? The sheer amount of painstaking labor far outweighs the financial payout. Honestly, a much simpler fake would have worked just fine.
Which leads us to our next possibility. Section 4. Hiding from the Inquisition.
So, if it wasn't a scam, maybe this book was born out of intense life-or-death necessity. We really have to remember the context of the 15th century here. It was a remarkably dangerous time to be a scientific genius. If you made any discoveries that contradicted the prevailing doctrines of the Church, say early breakthroughs in human anatomy, medicine, or advanced astronomy, you definitely weren't getting a Nobel Prize. No, you're getting burned at the stake as a witch. So this theory proposes that maybe an isolated genius or even a secret underground society created this completely uncrackable cipher just to safely store their forbidden scientific breakthroughs.
It's an incredibly compelling idea, right? But it's also a deeply tragic one. If this manuscript really was a protective vault for groundbreaking Renaissance science, the creators obviously intended to pass the decryption key down only to their chosen successors. But as we know, history is super chaotic. Somewhere along the line, the key was lost, and whatever incredible medical or anatomical knowledge is locked inside those bizarre green tubes, it simply died with them. The vault was basically sealed shut forever.
Now, let's fast forward a bit. Section 5, the algorithmic brick wall.
For decades, scientists and cryptographers confidently told each other, hey, just wait until we have computers. The overarching assumption was that human bias was the only thing actually standing in our way. Everyone figured that once we stripped away the human element, the code would easily fall. So in recent years, they threw the absolute full weight of modern technology at these ancient vellum pages. The entire manuscript was painstakingly digitized and fed into the most advanced neural networks out there. They utilized cutting-edge natural language processing and ran the Voynich script against thousands of known human languages, desperately looking for even a fractional phonetic match.
And the result of all that computing power? A totally devastating blow to the world of computer science. Time and time again, the output essentially spit back, error, no match found. Our absolute best artificial intelligence could only confidently tell us what the language wasn't. It was completely incapable of telling us what it actually was. I mean, every few years, some professor will proudly claim their new AI model has finally cracked it, and then, within weeks, peer reviews tear the claim to absolute shreds.
What we're really looking at here is the ultimate algorithmic brick wall. Think about it. This is a 600-year-old document that actively resists the absolute most cutting-edge processing power humanity has to offer today. It completely refuses to yield to our machines. And honestly, this spectacular technological failure leads us directly to a dark, final theory. It's one that professional codebreakers really hate to discuss.
See, the human mind is incredibly powerful, but it has one massive vulnerability. We are biologically hardwired to find meaning in things. We look up at a random scattering of stars and we connect the dots to see constellations. We experience random coincidences and we instantly call it fate. So the darkest theory is that the ultimate trick of the Voynich Manuscript might not actually be a code at all. It might just be a mirror. It could be a perfectly designed psychological trap built specifically to make brilliant minds waste their entire lives chasing a ghost.
The Voynich Manuscript is just this incredibly humbling reminder that some historical doors are locked from the inside, and the keys simply no longer exist on this earth. It broke human minds for a century, and now it has broken our most advanced algorithms. But that leaves us with a massive question. What happens when an unsolved mystery doesn't come from a dusty chest in a forgotten castle, but actively reaches out to us from the cold, dead static of deep space? In our next explainer, we're going to look at the exact moment the cosmos broke our algorithms. Get ready to dive into the mind-bending story of the wow signal. We'll see you there.